Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us as we release the 2022 Roadmap of State Highway Safety Laws. I'm Kathy Chase, President of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Before I begin my remarks, this event is being recorded and is on the record. The recording and electronic media kit can be found on our website, saferoads.org. Viewers may submit questions throughout this event using the link on the news conference video streaming on our website. For those of you unfamiliar with Advocates, we're a coalition of public health, safety, consumer and law enforcement organizations, and insurance companies and agents. Since our founding in 1989, this coalition has successfully improved roadway safety through a multifaceted approach of state and federal legislative efforts, combined with pursuing comprehensive federal safety standards. These actions have made drivers and all road users, vehicles, and roadways safer. However, we are now at a critical point in our nation's surface transportation history. Motor vehicle crash fatalities are skyrocketing despite fewer miles being driven. The ripple effects of the COVID-19 pandemic include increases in dangerous driving and passenger behaviors, such as speeding and impaired driving, as well as fewer people buckling up. More than 20,000 people died in crashes during the first 6 months of 2021, an 18% increase over the same period the previous year. This was the highest half-year percentage increase ever recorded in this country. Reports from individual states also indicate that crash deaths for 2021 are surpassing 2020, some reaching levels not recorded in more than a decade. In addition to fatalities, crashes injure millions of people each year and impose a tremendous cost burden on society, nearing $1 trillion. But what's really important is that we don't lose sight that these facts and figures represent people. They are family members, friends, and loved ones who are being tragically impacted by preventable losses and serious, debilitating injuries. And speaking of people, in preparing for the release of our report, we wanted to take the pulse of the public on these issues. So we commissioned a Caravan online survey, which was conducted by Engine Insights. Interestingly, it found that nearly 75% of respondents were not aware of the drastic jump in traffic fatalities. Nonetheless, majorities of respondents were either extremely or very concerned about a variety of dangerous roadway behaviors, including speeding, impaired and distracted driving, as well as people not buckling up. Notably, 66% of respondents said not enough is being done to address dangerous roadway behaviors. This view received majority support from all political affiliations and regions across the country. Advocates' Roadmap report offers readily available and verified solutions to address many of these roadway dangers. The 16 laws detailed in this report come under 5 overarching categories: occupant protection, child passenger safety, graduated driver licensing laws for novice teen and young adult drivers, impaired driving, and distracted driving. Every state and Washington, D.C. receives a rating in each category, an overall rating, and a report card, if you will, identifying which laws they are missing. Ratings are then assessed as green, yellow, or red. We are sending the Roadmap report to every governor and the mayor of D.C. as a call to action for the 2022 legislative session to prioritize meaningful safety improvements. Not only are these actions supported by data, research, and experience, the poll also demonstrates the public's concern and desire for change. In addition to needed progress on traffic safety laws at the state level, swift action at the U.S. Department of Transportation to implement the safety provisions in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is essential. Enacted last November, the infrastructure law took steps forward for vehicle safety that DOT should view as a floor and not a ceiling for what must be achieved. For example, every family deserves to ride in a car with the safest brakes, known as automatic emergency braking, not just those who can afford higher-end models or expensive add-on luxury packages. They also deserve the assurance that brakes are meeting minimum performance standards, which is not happening currently. Now is the time for this administration to deliver on its commitment to safe roads for everyone. The title of this year's report is Out of Control, to reflect the mounting death and injury toll on our streets and roads. States, as well as the U.S. Department of Transportation, are overdue in enacting on life-saving proposals that will achieve significant outcomes. Allowing this carnage to occur year after year when solutions are readily available is simply unacceptable. To conclude, I'd like to thank our distinguished and dynamic panel of speakers who each offer expertise and unique perspectives. I'd also like to thank Advocates Board of Directors and acknowledge the tremendous Advocates team for producing this invaluable report and for their efforts leading up to today's event. Allison Kennedy, who leads the Roadmap Project, Tara Gill, Pete Daniels, Kathy Barzy, Lisa Drew, Sean Kildare, and Peter Kurdock, as well as Bill Braunrott, Kim Levinson, Jamie Douglas of Daylight Communications for creating the Roadmap cover, and Windrose Media for producing today's webcast. Thank you so much. I will now turn to our speakers. Our first speaker today is Congresswoman Jan Chukowski of Illinois. She has been a steadfast champion in the effort to improve vehicle and consumer safety. As the chair of the U.S. House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, she plays a vital role in promoting critical safety advances, including those that were enacted as part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Her compassion for the victims of preventable crashes has translated into numerous legislative successes that will have a profound impact on safety for years to come. We thank Chairwoman Chukowski for providing remarks today.
Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Chukowski. I represent the 9th Congressional District of Illinois, have been in office for 22 years now, and I am so happy to be with you at this important conference. Let me begin by thanking the advocates for highway and auto safety. Honestly, I could not have accomplished what I did without you. I chair the subcommittee on consumer protection and commerce in the House of Representatives that works on this issue. But I am so happy to be at your conference. So I want to just underscore what you already know, is that we have a crisis right now in deaths on the highway, on accidents that needs to be dealt with. And of course, the good news is that we did, or at least we made a really important beginning, that in the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, there is an incredible package that addresses this crisis and would save literally tens of thousands of lives, that would address the really millions of injuries that are on the highways, our highways every single year, and save millions and millions of dollars that are associated with crashes. So I think that put together, this package of bills that was in the infrastructure bill and now is the law of the land as of last November, is one of the most important pieces that is in there because of the actual saving of lives and injuries and money. So what's exactly in the legislation? Let's talk about what the bill actually does. For one thing, it would stop the deaths in hot cars. Do you know, since 1990, about 1,000 infants and toddlers have died because of the heating up of cars. And, you know, even the most responsible parents, unfortunately, have experienced this terrible tragedy. And by the way, that's not even to mention the number of animals who also had perished in cars because they have been heated up. So now there will be technology that makes sure that every driver is aware of something in the back seat. We also will prevent drunk and impaired driving. We have methods to be able to do that, to prevent the collapse of seat backs that have been constructed in a way that children can get crushed and some die because of accidents that cause that kind of collapse of the seat backs. Our legislation will have critical auto assistance warnings that will be in the cars, including automatic brake assistance, lane departure warnings, frontal crash warnings that'll be there, and not just for cars where you pay a lot of money for these special services, but also to have for every single car on the road, whatever you pay for a new car. We're also preventing carbon monoxide deaths, because keyless cars, sometimes you don't know if they're on or they're off, and have actually resulted in death. And so that is addressed in this legislation. And we can give consumers some confidence by updating the 5-star safety ratings system so that it's more accurate and people can actually judge what's there. So these are very, very important, but the job isn't done, because now we have to make sure that the regulators get on the move to have the proper regulations to actually make these improvements come to life. So it's a whole nother step. And I'm absolutely going to continue to fight to make sure that all new cars have them. But states also have an important role to play. There are state safety grants that legislators and auto safety organizations ought to make sure are applied for, and also to work on legislation in their own states to make sure that all of this is implemented. And finally, I think the key element is you. We want to make sure that the advocacy work that you've done so well, the partnership that we've shared and has been so effective so far, continues. We need to keep the pressure on. We need to work together. We need to mobilize more and more people to demand action as soon as possible. You know, so much of what we're talking about in this legislation are preventable deaths and injuries. And, you know, so there's no excuse for taking time, for dawdling. Let's get it done. Thank you so much for your advocacy.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Chukowski. We will be here right with you every step of the way to take these important and critical next steps. Next, we will hear from Nevada Assemblywoman Shannon BILBRAY-AXELROD. During the 2021 legislative session, the Assemblywoman was the primary sponsor of legislation to strengthen Nevada's child occupant protection statute. Unfortunately, the Assemblywoman was unable to join us live today due to a medical procedure. We send our best wishes and thank her for her leadership on behalf of children, our most vulnerable passengers.
Good morning. I'm Shannon BILBRAY-AXELROD. I've been a proud member of the Nevada State Legislature representing the 34th District since 2016. You might say public service is part of the family business. My father was former U.S. Representative James Bilbray, who had the honor of representing Nevada's 1st Congressional District for nearly a decade. I am very glad to report Nevada upgraded its child passenger safety laws last year upon enacting a bill that I sponsored, Assembly Bill 118. We also had 11 co-sponsors. The new law, which went into effect January 1st, recognizes best practices for child passenger safety and requires that children remain in a rear-facing safety seat until the age of 2 or longer, and that children use a booster seat until 57 inches in height. Passage of this new law also resulted in Nevada rising to a yellow rating in the Advocates Roadmap report. Since learning that motor vehicle crashes are a leading cause of death for children in the United States, and that on average, 40% of children killed in crashes are unrestrained, I decided to take action. Over the 5-year period, 2015 to 2019, on average, more than 1,100 children under the age of 14 were killed in traffic crashes. In 2019, more than 180,000 children were injured as well. These devastating deaths and injuries must stop. Improperly restrained child passengers are a serious public health problem. Yet, it can be addressed with a proven solution. Proper car seat use reduces fatal injury by 71% for infants and 54% for toddlers. Ensuring children are in the appropriate restraint for their age and size greatly improves their chances of surviving a crash and avoiding serious injury. Advocates' Roadmap report includes 2 vital passenger safety laws. First, requiring babies to be restrained in rear-facing seats through the age of 2 or longer. Second, after reaching the maximum weight and height limit of a forward-facing safety seat, requiring children to be placed in a booster seat until the child can properly use the vehicle's seatbelt, around 57 inches in height, or age 8 or older. Looking at the map, tremendous opportunities to enhance safety for child passengers exist, with 34 states still in need of rear-facing through age 2 laws, and 36 states and DC in need of optimal booster seat laws. Last November, the news outlet reported that Nevada had reached a grim milestone, with 2021 on track to be the deadliest year in decades for traffic fatalities. Nevada must prioritize safer roads, and we are not going it alone. My fellow state lawmakers and I play a crucial role in getting these basic safety laws passed. I urge every state elected official to pick up this report and use it as a playbook for action in 2022. Let's not let another year go by where we can be saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. We need more champions like you in every state legislature throughout the country, and could not agree more that this should be used as a playbook for action as legislative sessions kick off this year. I now would like to introduce Alex OTTE, National President of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Alex, a victim of an impaired driving crash, has been fulfilling that leadership role admirably since January of last year. Advocates is proud to work with MAD, Alex, and all the heroic crash victims advocated for countermeasures to eliminate impaired driving on our roadways. Thanks so much for being here today, Alex.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you, Congresswoman Chukowski and Assemblywoman BILBRAY-AXELROD, for bringing the power of your positions to this vitally important challenge of keeping our roads safe in our communities. I appreciate the opportunity to join advocates and all of the speakers here today. As National President of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I represent the nearly 1 million victims and survivors that MAD has served since our founding 41 years ago. As a survivor of someone else's choice to drive impaired myself, I can tell you that we are a part of a club no one else wants to join, and that trauma truly never goes away. For 4 decades, we have worked with partners like advocates to pass stronger laws that will make roads safer. We are proud to work alongside advocates this year on the drunk and impaired driving technology provision included in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The new requirement for technology to prevent impaired driving in all new vehicles has the potential to save more than 9,400 lives and countless injuries every year when fully implemented. This would nearly eliminate drunk driving. Since the day my life was forever changed at 13 years old, I knew that I would fight to be the last little girl this would ever happen to. 11 years later, I know that I wasn't. But because of this provision in the infrastructure bill, I now know that that day will come in my lifetime. With the technological advancements in new cars today, we are confident that NHTSA and the auto industry will achieve this in the given timeline of 3 years to identify the technology and then 2 to 3 years to install it on all new cars. I cannot fully articulate how important this progress is to victims and survivors of drunk and drug-impaired driving. Every step we take toward eliminating impaired driving deaths and injuries is significant, and that's why this roadmap is so important. The reports over the last 2 years are not good. Alcohol and drug impairment, speeding, and not wearing seatbelts are cited as leading contributors to more crashes, more injuries, and more deaths at a time when fewer cars are on the road. This is a public safety crisis, and we need states to take action now. MADD and advocates have a long history of working together with federal and state legislators on laws that will stop tragedies on our roadways. We are unified in our advocacy for the 3 laws that advocates evaluates in each state as a part of the roadmap. Requiring ignition interlocks for every drunk driving offender, laws that create a separate offense or increase penalties for people who drive impaired with a child passenger, and making it illegal to have an open container in cars. First, ignition interlocks for all offenders. 34 states and Washington, D.C. require ignition interlocks for first-time offenders and for every subsequent drunk driving offense. Every state has an ignition interlock program of some type, but we want every state to require these devices every single time. Just last week, MADD released our annual ignition interlock report, tracking the number of times an interlock has stopped someone with a 0.08 BAC or higher from driving. Through data collected from interlock companies, we learned that more than 390,000 attempts to drive drunk were prevented in 2020, an average of 1,069 stops per day. I am both grateful that these devices work and frightened to think of how many times and how many lives could have been shattered without them. Next, drunk driving with a child passenger. No question, this is a crime and a form of child abuse. It is also one of the leading causes of death among our nation's children. 48 states have laws imposing additional sanctions for those who drive drunk with a child passenger in the vehicle. MADD encourages states to pass child endangerment laws similar to Leandra's law in New York, which imposes an additional period on ignition interlock and makes the offense a felony. Children don't have a voice or a choice when riding with an adult, and they should never be in danger from drunk driving. Every child deserves a designated, non-drinking, sober driver. Finally, open container laws. MADD and our partners fought hard to make it illegal to have an open container in a vehicle, but as the roadmap shows, there's still more work to do. 11 states need to strengthen their laws to meet federal requirements. Open container laws and their enforcement are especially important now, when states have temporarily or permanently passed laws that allow restaurants to sell alcohol to go. While MADD is not opposed to curbside sales of alcohol, we do want to make sure that those containers are sealed and placed in a trunk and far out of the driver's reach. We at MADD believe that we are on a path toward no more victims of drunk and drug-impaired driving. State legislators can do their part by passing laws that keep their communities safe and spare families the trauma of being impacted by someone else's choice to drive impaired. It will take all of us, but I truly believe that if we work together to advocate for smart laws, we will spare families and entire communities the unimaginable devastation caused by drunk and drug-impaired driving. Thank you all so much for having me.
Alex, thank you so much. It's truly been an honor to work with you over the last couple of years, and your leadership has been remarkable. Working together with MADD throughout the decades has really been a shining point for advocates for highway and auto safety, and we will bring this technology over the finish line. Our next speaker is Alan MANESS of State Farm. Alan has decades of experience working with Congress and the executive branch to promote public policy positions that are important to State Farm and its customers. State Farm has been a stalwart ally in Advocates Safety Mission, and we are honored to have Alan currently serving as insurance co-chair on Advocates Board of Directors. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks, Kathy. Good morning. As Kathy mentioned, I'm Alan MANESS, and I'm the Vice President of Federal Affairs and Counsel for State Farm Insurance. State Farm, of course, is the nation's leading property and casualty insurer. And we are a founding board member of the Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. This coalition has existed for 33 years, and it has worked consistently and conscientiously to try to promote the types of measures that are mentioned in the roadmap report. Those measures are proven lifesavers. They have been proven to create safer vehicles, safer roads, and road users. And we've made a lot of progress through the years with the enactment of these measures and their enforcement. We've saved untold numbers of crashes, injuries, and fatalities. But we're really facing an alarming trend. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a real uptick in fatalities. With crash fatalities reaching levels that we haven't experienced in 15 years, the release of the roadmap of state highway safety laws couldn't be timelier. These 16 optimal laws, which are detailed in the roadmap, are proven lifesavers, and one of the major areas of focus is occupant protection. And I'm going to talk about that for a minute here. Basically, it's a life or death decision on whether you decide to buckle your seatbelt. And because people do wear their seatbelts, we're saving 14,000 lives every year. But if 100% of those over the age of 5 in vehicles were wearing their seatbelts, we could save another 2,000 lives every year. And how do we get seatbelt usage to a higher rate? Well, one of the things that we could do, of course, is to have primary enforcement of seatbelt laws in all seating positions. There are 30 states where we don't have that currently. And this is something that we really need to move to if we're going to have a safer highway and roadway system. So let's look at what the public thinks of this issue. The public recognizes that this is a big issue. As you can see from this chart, 92% of those that were surveyed in a new poll that was commissioned by advocates are concerned with the lack of seatbelt use or safety seats for child passengers. And 65% say they are extremely or very concerned. Now, there was an additional poll that was done by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And that was particularly telling on the issue of rear seat passengers. In that poll, they found that 40% of those surveyed said one of the reasons why they don't wear a belt when they're in the rear seat is because there's not a law requiring it. And 60% in that same poll said that if there was a law requiring it, they would wear a belt. So that's something that we need to move forward as quickly as we possibly can, requiring that there be a seatbelt requirement for the rear seat. So with the lack of belt use on the rise and contributing to the recent fatality uptick, now's the time for states to enact this common sense measure. So there's another area of occupant protection that I also want to touch upon, which is the all-rider motorcycle helmet law. Motorcycles are the most hazardous form of motor vehicle transportation, and to counterbalance some of the risk, helmet use is essential. Research and real-world experience show that helmet use is far greater in states that have the all-rider requirement. It's at a level of 84% in those states compared to only 54% in states that do not have this requirement. That's pretty significant when you consider that 5,400 motorcyclists were killed in 2020, which was a 9% increase over the numbers in 2019. So we urge all the states to adopt all rider helmet laws. So switching from occupant protection, I'll just touch on one more topic. I want to mention a major and growing threat to our roadways, and that is distracted driving. An expanding array of digital distractions over recent years have compounded this problem. At a minimum, states should have all driver text messaging and cell phone use restrictions for inexperienced, novice, and teen drivers. And that sort of measure, those types of measures are rated in this report. The report also highlights the need for states to upgrade existing distracted driving laws to include other types of technology like video conferencing, playing games, streaming content, basically any other non-navigational or non-emergency function that's being done with technology in a vehicle. So here again, the advocates' new poll shows that people recognize this dangerous behavior, with 98% expressing concern and 84% saying they are extremely or very concerned with distracted driving caused by talking on cell phones, texting, or using other mobile devices. We must do more to address this constant and widespread danger, which is also contributing to the growing fatality figures. So I want to thank the team at Advocates for issuing this important report and for their ongoing efforts to advance policies in it. Each law enacted prevents future tragedies from occurring. So thank you all for all your work on behalf of highway and roadway safety. Thank you.
Alan, thank you so much. Your leadership and devotion to highway safety have really shown throughout your long tenure on our board of directors, and thank you for serving as our insurance co-chair. Next, we will hear from Lieutenant Carmen TREVIZO of the Oro Valley, Arizona Police Department. During her tenure, she has served in a number of roles, including patrol officer, detective with the State Gang Task Force, hostage negotiator, and public information officer. Advocates is grateful for the many law enforcement officers like Lieutenant TREVIZO who serve their communities and work each day to keep them safe. Lieutenant TREVIZO, thank you for joining us.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Lieutenant Carmen TREVIZO, and I'm glad to join you all today as Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety releases the 2022 Roadmap of State Highway Safety Laws. I've been honored to serve with the Oro Valley, Arizona Police Department for nearly 24 years. In my current role as Patrol Lieutenant, I oversee approximately 50 officers charged with protecting our community, including traffic safety enforcement. My professional mission is also motivated by a personal tragedy. My cousin Christina was killed by a drunk driver when she was only 18 years old, and I will never forget that day. And this devastated our family. Seeing other families experience the loss of a loved one in preventable crashes that occur on our roadways is a heart-wrenching aspect of the job of law enforcement officers. We are also not immune to these dangers. 14 officers were struck and killed by vehicles while on duty in 2021. And that same year, 17 officers were victims of vehicular assault. Preventing deaths and injuries caused by crashes is a driving factor behind our important work. Unfortunately, we know from experience and data that our roads have become more deadly in recent years, with more speeding and impaired driving. Statistics from the U.S. Department of Transportation show that in 2020, fatalities in speeding-related crashes were up 11%. Speeding not only can contribute to the frequency of crashes, but the severity as well. Further, deaths in police-reported alcohol involvement crashes were up 9%. These are shocking figures. The public is understandably alarmed by these and other deadly driving behaviors. The Advocates poll released today shows concern among strong majorities across a range of demographics and reveals 68% were extremely or very concerned about speeding, and 80% were similarly extremely or very concerned about impaired driving. Advocates' Roadmap report identifies sensible ways to address these serious hazards on our roadways. It gives legislatures a clear guide for action to enact the 16 fundamental traffic safety laws, including 3 targeting impaired driving. When supported by officers like mine enforcing them, we can make meaningful progress towards bringing down the number of those killed and injured. Combined with the advanced vehicle safety technologies you've heard about today, like automatic emergency braking and impaired driving prevention technology, the potential to save lives is remarkable. Advancing strong traffic safety laws and employing successful vehicle safety systems are necessary to turn the tide on rising crash deaths and counter persisting traffic safety dangers that inflict pain and suffering on families. And in closing, I have a short statement in Spanish for our Spanish speakers. El reporte de mapa de leas de seguridad de carreteras estatales, declaraciones del orador, resultados de encuesta y otros materiales del 2022, junto con la grabación de hoy, estarán disponibles en la página de Advocates, www.advocates.org. www.saferoads.org. El reporte de MAPA revela que los 50 estados, incluyendo el Distrito de Columbia, tienen oportunidades para mejorar sus leyes de seguridad y pueden ser útiles para los legisladores en planificar prioridades. Además, los resultados de la encuesta enseñan los problemas de alta preocupación para el público sobre la conducta en las carreteras son severas. El reporte del MAPA ofrece soluciones convincentes y claramente que pueden dirigirnos en la dirección correcta. Gracias. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant. Thank you for your service. Thank you for joining us for today. And thank you for your dedication to highway safety. Our next speaker is Mary JAGIM. Mary has more than 30 years of experience in emergency nursing, healthcare leadership, public policy, and healthcare consulting. We are very glad to also have Mary as the consumer co-chair of Advocates Board of Directors. Thank you, Mary, for being with us today.
Thank you, Kathy. As Kathy mentioned, I'm Mary JAGIM, and I'm the consumer co-chair of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. I'm also a past president of the Emergency Nurse Association, an organization dedicated to advancing emergency nursing excellence with over 50,000 members worldwide. Emergency nurses are on the front lines of public health care, and that includes serving as steadfast heroes on the front lines of the pandemic. We have a deep firsthand understanding that maintaining public health is key to a flourishing society. Prevention is our primary focus, followed by the use of verified evidence-based solutions. This same concept applies to improving and ensuring roadway safety. The Advocates 2022 Roadmap of State Highway Safety Laws provides solutions for preventing roadway crashes, fatalities, and injuries. Each year, Advocates produces this nationwide report card to help governors and state lawmakers identify safety gaps and the optimal policies needed to close those gaps. I am pleased to announce that 2 states took action consistent with Advocates' recommendations in 2021. As you heard earlier, Nevada upgraded its child passenger safety laws, which improved its overall state rating from red to yellow. This brings the total number of states with a yellow rating to 31. The state of Wisconsin, which is my new home, upgraded its supervised driving requirement for novice drivers to at least 50 hours during the learner stage, 10 of which must be at night. The supervised driving time requirement is one of 6 laws Advocates recommends as part of a comprehensive graduated driver's licensing program known as GDL. These programs introduce teens to driving gradually under safer conditions and for a very good reason. These programs introduce teens to how to be safer on the road and under supervised guidance by parents or other adults. Motor vehicle crashes are a leading killer of teens in the United States. And now with 9 of the 16 laws recommended by Advocates on the books, Wisconsin continues to receive an overall yellow rating, unchanged from last year. We commend these states and are encouraged by their progress and actions to save lives. Obviously, there is still much more work to do. As you can see on this slide, 11 states received the lowest rating of red in this year's roadmap report, demonstrating substantial opportunities for improvement. We are pleased that 8 states in the District of Columbia received the highest rating of green, representing significant progress in establishing optimal traffic safety laws. Still, no state has enacted all 16 laws recommended in this report, and the total number of laws missing nationwide stands today at 390. The consequences of continued inaction are all too clear. Every day, highly skilled emergency nurses and physicians care for those injured in motor vehicle crashes. And even though we do our very best, many patients do not survive, or they leave our hospitals with debilitating lifelong injuries. Prevention-driven solutions, like those outlined in Advocates Roadmap report, prevent needless death and injury and keep people from needing to come into our emergency departments. This is an outcome that I think we can all agree is a win. Thank you so much for letting me participate.
Mary, thank you so much. And thank you to all of the emergency nurses throughout the country who are our true frontline heroes throughout the pandemic and always. Before we go to Q&A, I'd like to give a quick state of the states and federal update. 37 states and DC have already convened their 2022 session. 4 state legislatures will not meet this year. Some promising bills and efforts are already underway, and we encourage states to take action to get them over the finish line without delay. They include distracted driving upgrades in Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, Ohio, and South Carolina. Bills upgrading ignition interlock device laws to be required for all offenders in California, Georgia, and South Carolina. In terms of occupant protection safety, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, and Vermont are pursuing upgrades to their seatbelt laws. We urge all states to move forward with these measures, and child passenger safety improvements are pending in Hawaii, Massachusetts, and New York. Efforts to upgrade novice teen and young adult driver safety in California, New Jersey, and New York have been ongoing, and measures to permit the use of automated enforcement to curb speeding and red light running are gaining momentum across the country. To those states considering weakening or repealing proven traffic safety laws, we urge them to reject such efforts to keep their roadways safe. On the federal level, the rolling back of motor vehicle safety standards for passenger vehicles and trucks must be stopped. The Biden administration, and more specifically, U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and his team, have a clear role in addressing the safety crisis on our roads by swiftly advancing comprehensive performance standards for proven vehicle safety technologies. With 1 year already behind them, they now have 3 short years to bring solutions over the finish line. We urge immediate action on these 3 issues. 1, advanced driver assistance systems in all new vehicles, including automatic emergency braking that responds to vulnerable road users and can function at all necessary speeds, will be a complete game changer. 2, impaired driving prevention technology will save thousands of lives every year once widely deployed. 3, systems to prevent children from dying in hot cars. The technology must be standard equipment in all new passenger vehicles and be required to detect an occupant and then issue an alert. These verified solutions are within reach and lives are dependent upon them. It's time for our leaders to deliver, and we will continue to be here every step of the way with them. Thank you. And now we will turn to Q&A. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so by using the link on our webcast page at saferoads.org.
Thank you, Kathy. The first question that has come in, could you clarify if the points Representative Chukowski outlined about vehicle technology that could help keep people safer were passed in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or are those things that she's hoping lawmakers will soon require auto producers to make standard in every vehicle?
Yeah, I'd like to answer that question for Congresswoman Chukowski, who was unable to join us live because of her travel schedule, but wish she could have. Those improvements were included in the infrastructure law. However, not as comprehensively as we would have liked. For example, some of them don't have deadlines, and some of them don't cover all road users, like pedestrians or bicyclists. So now is when we pivot, and we really turn to the U.S. Department of Transportation to make sure that comprehensive regulations and standards are put through. And as I mentioned earlier, this needs to be done as quickly as possible. Fatalities are skyrocketing on our highways, and we know that these solutions work. We know that automatic emergency braking reduces and mitigates crashes. We know that other systems like lane departure warning, blind spot detection, and other technologies are saving lives. However, they're not in all cars, and that's why it's so critical that the U.S. Department of Transportation take action now.
Thank you, Kathy. That will conclude the live Q&A.
Well, I'd just like to thank again all of our wonderful speakers who each brought a different vantage point today. The insurance executive vantage point, Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all drunk driving victims, emergency nurses, law enforcement officers. All of our speakers have just provided invaluable insights and expertise to today's panel. And I just would like to thank you. And I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us today. Please do not hesitate to reach out to advocates. Come join us in our collective efforts as we work to advance highway and auto safety issues. And please pick up our roadmap report, which is on our website, saferoads.org. Take a look, see what state laws you're missing, and contact your elected officials. It really takes all of us to make a difference and to save lives. Thank you so much.